What's going on there, YouTube? And welcome to Fresh Comic Stories. Guys, this is the channel that we basically sit down and cover different kinds of comic book stories from Marvel, DC, and even IDW. Now today, we're going to jump back over to Marvel and continue our coverage over the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, today, we're going to pick up with Ultimate Fantastic Four, and we're going to cover the storyline called the Salem Seven. Now, this was the last storyline we got in the Ultimate Fantastic Four before Ultimatum, the big Ultimate Marvel event we're going to cover very soon on this channel. But this storyline right here is only 4 parts long, and truthfully, it's a very interesting storyline. But I do hope you guys like this video, and if you do, please hit that like button down below and also subscribe for more content like this in the near future. But yes guys, this is the last Ultimate Fantastic Four storyline. I do hope you enjoy. To begin today's story, we pick up with Susan Storm at Nursery 2. Now, Nursery 2 is basically the Baxter Building 2.0. Remember that back when we were first introduced to the Baxter Building, it was a thinking tank where the smartest children go to and build powerful weapons, force shields, and other branches of the military. Well, after the Fantastic Four were formed, the rest of the children left the Baxter Building, which led them going to Oregon, I think, and led to the formation of Nursery 2. But the reason why we are here now is because Susan Storm was called because one of the people at Nursery 2, Josie Hart, found an egg. Of course, when she found the egg had already hatched. And the reason why Sue is called is because Sue is a biologist, and maybe she can figure out what was inside this egg. Now, while she is there in Nursery 2, that is when the TV goes off and introduce a new group of heroes in Salem, Oregon, calling themselves the Salem Seven. But we do not get the chance to learn much about them, but you have Sue take a couple samples from the egg and head back to the Baxter Building. Now, while she is leaving Nursery 2, we see that something is watching her and wants Susan for something. This leads us to picking back up with Johnny and Ben at the Baxter Building, where they made some crazy bet. Now, what the bet was does not matter, but of course, their bet led to them putting a hole in the Baxter Building floor. The reason why I talked about this is because it kind of plays a part in the story with the emotions of the characters. But we see that when Susan gets back to the Baxter Building, she sees what has happened thanks to her brother and Ben. But this is where we get reminded that her and Reed have broken up. Remember that in our last couple of videos, Thanos was mind controlling Reed to build the Cosmic Cube, but made him act cruel towards Susan and led to her just leaving him. Now she knows that he was mind control, but dealing with his cruel moment changed her and led to them breaking up. Now we do see once again that something is watching Sue and Johnny from afar. This is where we pick up on the ground floor and we get introduced to a new character in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. We get to see Agatha Harkness, where we see that she works for S.H.I.E.L.D. The reason why she is here is because apparently S.H.I.E.L.D. sent her here to see if the Baxter Building is still an asset for S.H.I.E.L.D. The way to check on that is to see how everyone feels towards each other and how well the team works together. Now, this is where we see that Franklin Storm, the father of both Johnny and Susan Storm, had no idea that she was even coming by. But that is when he checks his email and sees that S.H.I.E.L.D. gave him the heads up about her stopping by to see how the Baxter Building was doing. Of course, this leads to her begin questioning the different team members. Except asking legit questions that deal with how the team works together, we see her ask more personal questions instead. Like she asks Reed about his current situation with Susan and tells him how he went too fast into their relationship and now they are broken up. And before we are able to see her ask him more questions about that, we see her begin asking questions towards Ben and Susan, which these questions more of why Ben is here for and like how he's an asset for the team. And Susan gets asked questions about her relationship like Reed did earlier, except Susan gets upset about it and leaves. Now for Johnny, she does this weird thing where she asks if she is able to massage him, and so she has him remove clothes and massages him in private. It's weird for a comic book, but let's move on now. That is when we pick up with Susan in her lab, where she is looking at one of the samples from the egg that is back at Nursery 2. This is where you have her realize that the sample she has loves to split up into multiple different cellular structures on its own. And then for some strange reason, it comes back together. It is constantly splitting and rejoining over and over again. Now, right after she is able to make that discovery, the alarm goes off, meaning that there is some kind of trouble, and the Fantastic Four need to move now to save the day. And so you have everyone suit up and fly out to where the attack is happening. Now, when the Fantastic Four gets there in one of their many vehicles, they get shot right out of the sky by some kind of laser, which brings them down to the ground and where they are greeted by the Salem Seven, the new superhero team that was briefly introduced in the beginning of our video. And they should not be here. They should be back at Oregon in the city of Salem. And so why are the newest superhero team over here in New York? Why does it seem like they are the ones who attacked the Fantastic Four? Now, this is where I explain the differences between the Ultimate Marvel Universe and the main Marvel Universe when it comes to the Salem Seven. In the main Marvel Universe, the Salem Seven were a group of people whose powers were more based around the idea of magic. They came from a small town called New Salem in Colorado. Everyone in New Salem had some kind of magic abilities, except the Salem Seven were the most powerful ones, mainly because they were able to turn into mutated creatures as well. But something else to point out is that the Seven shared the same father, Nicholas Scratch, who was a son of Agatha Harkness. And so Agatha Harkness in the main Marvel Universe is the grandmother of the Salem Seven, and she was a powerful witch. Now, something else to point out is that in the city of New Salem, they cut all ties to the outside world because they were practicing magic and stuff, and people would look at them crazy. But now the question is, what is the origin of the Salem Seven and Agatha Harkness in the Ultimate Marvel Universe? But getting back into the story, we see that the Salem Seven, for some reason, don't want the help of the Fantastic Four, that they want to be the only superhero team around to save the day. And so you have the Salem Seven basically tell the Fantastic Four that they will fight them for the chance to save the day, which is weird, but you have Reed tell his team, do not fight them. There are people to save. We need to help them out and let the Seven take care of whatever happened inside the building. And so you have the Fantastic Four just leave and let the Seven handle the problem. Now we pick up with the Fantastic Four arriving back at the Baxter Building after meeting with the Salem Seven. Of course, that is when they are greeted by Agatha Harkness, who again in this universe supposedly works for S.H.I.E.L.D., and that is it. No connection to magic. This is where she continues the idea of asking questions to get an idea of how everyone feels about being on the team. This leads to questions like her asking about Johnny and Ben's feeling, because technically they are not the brains of the team. Reed and Susan are, because they work for S.H.I.E.L.D. and get paid by S.H.I.E.L.D. as well. Johnny and Ben are only there because they are part of the Fantastic Four team. And so you have Johnny tell how he feels about being on this team, and it sucks. And you have Ben admit that his depression has gotten worse because he hates looking like a monster. Then you have Agatha Harkness point out that Reed truly cannot be the leader of the team since he's the one who basically caused all the problems the Fantastic Four had to deal with. Aliens, monsters from other dimensions, and the list goes on and on. And now Susan knows that what Agatha is doing, trying to cause a rift in the team. And so you have Susan leave and go to her lab. Now this leads us a few minutes later, maybe hours, where we pick up with Susan on the balcony trying to get some fresh air. Of course, that is when she is greeted by Reed Richards, and Reed has been trying to get his relationship back with Susan, except that is when you have Susan tell him to stop, that every intense relationship changes a person. With her and Reed relationship being so intense, it changed her. And so now she does not want to be in a relationship anymore. She wants to be more like Johnny, love him and leave him. She does not want to be tied down to one guy. And that makes Reed walk away. But as soon as Reed walks away, that is when Susan is greeted by Agatha Harkness again. And this time Agatha tells Susan that she is needed for a meeting with Carol Danvers, because at this point Carol Danvers runs S.H.I.E.L.D. and since Nick Fury is still trapped in another dimension. And so you have Susan agree and they get on a chopper to leave and meet up with Carol Danvers. This leads into Susan and Agatha flying in this chopper and supposedly going to this meeting with Carol Danvers. But this is where you have Agatha tell Susan that there is some kind of connection with the Salem Seven and Susan, that after she went to Oregon and got those samples, it's weird how the Salem Seven appear a day later after Susan returned back from Oregon. Remember that the Salem Seven in this universe first appeared in Oregon, but you have Agatha tell Susan that they are meeting up with Carol Danvers here because the Triskelion, the home base of S.H.I.E.L.D., is not safe right now. Now as soon as Agatha leaves though, that is when Susan gets attacked by the Salem Seven, which tells us that the Salem Seven are somehow connected to Agatha. But the question is now, how? And so you have Susan try to protect herself against the Salem Seven the best she can, because these guys are actually giving her a challenge here, and they are not making it easy for her at all. Plus, it is 7 against 1 member. Now, these few pages really do show us how powerful Susan is when it comes to her force fields, because she is able to put up a fight here for the most part. Until that is when you have the Salem Seven able to knock her out and throw her in the water, making it seem like that she is now dead. Except we know she's not going to die here, but while she is slowly falling deeper into the ocean, that's when she is saved at the last minute. And the person who saves her is Namor. Namor is making his return in the Ultimate Marvel Universe after being gone for such a long time, but now he is back. This is where we pick up with Susan waking up in Namor's bed, and at first it does seem a little wrong here, and so you have Namor tell Susan that he only took her clothes off to address her wounds. Now this is where you have Namor tell her that he brought her to one of his cities. Well, one of the cities that is left underwater. And no, it is not Atlantis. This is another city. But this section of the story is going to lead us into learning what had happened to Atlantis, because remember, Namor is the last Atlantean alive. Because this is where we learn that Atlantis was destroyed by a being called the 10-Ed Drool. These beings are a little strange, where basically when one is born into the world, of course it's only one single being, but they are asexually. That one single being basically breaks apart into 7 different forms as a way to reproduce. Their goal is to take over the world, of course, But for them to be able to reproduce into 7 other creatures, they have to be hit with a high intense level of heat. That one person on the team who can do that, of course, is the Human Torch. And so this means that Agatha Harkness is a 10-ed drool, and she is able to break into 7 different beings, which of course are the Salem Seven. And her goal is to use the Human Torch to hatch the other eggs of the 10-ed drools and then begin the invasion. This also leads into Namor and Susan kissing one another, and Susan said because she is scared and she needed to be cared for. But yeah, that happened out of nowhere. This leads into us picking up with Agatha Harkness walking back into the Baxter Building, only to be greeted by some soldiers with Franklin Storm, because he figured out that she is a fake SHIELD agent, that she is something else, but he does not know what she is just yet. But of course, he does not know she has powers, and so that leads into her just taking out all the soldiers and Franklin Storm as well. Which then leads into her making her way up to the Human Torch. And remember, she has been trying to get close to the Human Torch this whole time. Now we know why she has been, because she is trying to capture him and use him to hatch the other eggs of the 10-ed drools. And she is able to sedate him and capture him. But now the question is, where are the other 10-ed drools at then if she is planning to hatch them into the world? But before we are able to figure that out, we see that she changed into the Salem Seven and started to fight the rest of the army of soldiers that was inside the Baxter Building and the last 2 members of the Fantastic Four. This leads us into finding out where are the rest of the eggs of the 10-ed drools. That the rest of the eggs are back in Nursery 2, because some of the members of Nursery 2 actually found more of the eggs of the 10-ed drools deeper underground, and there are hundreds of them just waiting down there, waiting to be hatched open by an intense amount of heat. Now we jump a few moments forward in time and we pick up with the Salem Seven arriving at the Nursery 2. Remember that Salem Seven are technically Agatha Harkness, but we pick up with them arriving at Nursery 2 and took care of the dinosaur creatures that Nursery 2 had there as pets, which is to me still weird. But now the Salem Seven is there with the Human Torch and getting ready to hatch the eggs. This is where we see Susan and Namor arriving back at the Baxter Building, where we see them finding Reed and Ben badly beaten up. And of course, that's because of the Salem Seven. Except now you have Susan go to her lab and basically whip up some kind of formula that can help them out and beat the Salem Seven. Basically some kind of formula that disrupts the 10-ed drools body structure or whatever. Just that her formula makes the 10-ed drools actually explode instead. We then jump back over to Nursery 2, where we pick up with some of the members of Nursery 2 trying to stop the Salem Seven. And so you have them trying all these different ways to slow down the Salem Seven, or even at least just beat them. And so the world will not be taken over by the 10-ed drools. The problem is that the Salem Seven still gets through all of these different traps that were put up. And then you have the Salem Seven defeat Nursery 2 team and capture them and hold them as hostages. This is where we jump forward to the end of the story, where you have Sue, Reed, Ben, and Namor arrive to stop the Salem Seven from hatching those eggs, where of course we do get a few good pages of fighting between the 2 teams. But in the middle of the fight, you have Reed and Sue release the formula that Sue cooked up to finally stop the 10-ed drools. Now remember, her formula is able to make the 10-ed drools actually explode, and that leads to them just being bombs basically. And so that makes the Fantastic Four dip out before they are also blown up as well. Now, before we end this story, one weird thing happens at the end of the book, where while the Fantastic Four, Namor, and Nursery Two people are trying to get out before they are killed by all of the explosions, that is when Sue realized that Reed is missing. And when she asks Namor, he lies to her and tells her he's at the surface waiting for them. Instead, Reed is still trapped down in Nursery 2, where it seems he is going to die by the explosions. Except you have Sue see Reed and saves him at the last second before he can be killed. Where we see them kiss and the book closes. And I'm guessing that means they are now back together. But this is the end of today's video. And so guys, please leave me a like down below and also subscribe for more comic book videos like this in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read? Well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'm out of here and I will see you on the next comic book video. Later guys.